to talk a little bit more when we get going.
Thank you,
All
Brian.
right. So I am going to share my screen. I'm going to be leveraging a case study to speak about how to implement or how to incorporate service design into your practice. This is, even though I'm going to level set and make sure that we're all on the same page, this is not a how-to service design talk. This is not an advanced talk on service design. It's mostly about, these are the things that you need to know in order to be able to apply service design to your practice. If you have any question, please feel free to chime in. I believe that Julia will be emceeing. I do have slides. You will not interrupt me if you have any questions. There are not that many of us, so let's make it a conversation. Happy to take any questions at any point. Otherwise, I will probably ask some questions. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. If someone can just let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, I can see your screen.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So we're going to be, I'm going to be talking about how to implement service design into your practice. And I'm going to be using one of the the projects that my company Conforma worked on to illustrate how to do so. And that project was based with the Indian Health Service, which is the primary federal provider of healthcare for American Indians and Alaskan Natives. So first, let's level set on what service design is. Service design is the practice of identifying the infrastructure, planning processes, the people, and putting the solutions together around the service. And while I'm not defining it there, I do have to define it in level set that according to Lou Downey, service is something that helps someone to do something. That's as simple as it is. A service is something that helps someone do something. And in order to achieve that, you need to identify who that someone is and what is it that they are trying to achieve and how, which is the process and technology. So if you've been in the technology space for any amount of time, you've already heard about people, process, and technology. So we're going to be primarily focusing on how do we organize people, process, and technology across three main areas, which are the ones that I like to use to determine how to apply service design to our practice, which are research, planning, and applying. So within the context of the Indian Health Service, I'll give you an overview first. In the Indian Health Service has been utilizing RPMS, the Resource and Patient Management System, as their primary electronic or their only electronic health record system since 1984. RPMS, as it is called, actually dates back from earlier than that with the Department of Veterans Affairs, who brought it over to the Indian Health Service. It is one of the most well-known and established open source electronic health record systems that is in use by the federal government or any large institution. And the Indian Health Service utilizes RPMS to provide healthcare to over 2.2 million American Indians and Alaskan Natives. It is utilized at over 25 hospitals that are primarily serviced by the Indian Health Service. There are over 55 health centers, which are different than hospitals, and 21 health stations, which are usually standalone operations. What that means is that RPMS needs to do a lot of things for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So if you consider what the definition, what Lou Downey's definition of service is, a service is something that helps someone to do something. within an electronic health record system, such as RPMS, there are a lot of services. One example is scheduling an appointment. You have a person, a human being, that needs to see a service provider. In the middle of it, you have a lot of processes. So you have the needing to speak to someone and how that is enabled. You have the actually finding availability on providers' schedules and how that is performed. And then you have the underlying technology, which can be as rudimentary as a physical scheduler to a computerized calendar that keeps tabs on a service provider's availability. So with that being said, let's start looking at these three main areas of research, planning, and applying. So apologies. So the way that I define research is probably very similar to how you all define research. And I see it as the foundation for any design project. It is what helps us to develop the necessary knowledge to be able to speak to the problems and to the people that are involved in it. In the case of the Indian Health Service, we utilize a number of approaches to document the information that was necessary for us to be able to kind of make decisions and make recommendations. Most often, these were interviews and workshops, but not always does research include interviews or just workshops. In the case of RPMS and the Indian Health Service, we did a lot of desk research, which involved a lot of looking at things and taking notes. So you're seeing the screen now, a sample screen from one of the tools that are part of the RPMS that is used by their labs. As a designer, you may say, "Oh my God, this looks so old," but then we have to start taking things into context and understanding what is it that it is trying to achieve, for whom, and what are their goals. But we also needed to understand the historical trajectory that this tool, that this electronic health record system had gone through, in order to make sure that we actually understood what they had learned, what they had gone through, to be able to actually look at what was possible in order to improve overall. So we started seeing some more visually meaningful screens, where they started incorporating GUIs, or graphical user interface, for the providers. Those were improved further, and we were also able to see them live, see them as providers were interacting with them. But the most important part of this was that we were able to map out how all of these systems interacted with one another, because we understood that when we are trying to affect change doesn't happen in a vacuum, especially not when you are speaking to systems that are providing access for people to be able to do things that are crucial for them. If you think about someone trying to schedule an appointment, usually it's not just someone trying to schedule an appointment just for the sake of scheduling that appointment. It's often they need to schedule an appointment in order to see a healthcare provider to address a health concern that they have. That health concern may be affecting the way that they live their lives, and could be impacting their families. So you start seeing all of the different interconnected points, and by doing the research by leveraging the information that we had and visualizing it, we were able to start understanding exactly how different items, how different modules within RPMS were affecting the provider's ability to be able to provide the care or service to the people that were scheduling those appointments or trying to see them. And this leads us into the planning phase. So you now have research, you now have assets that you have developed based and that you have collected based on the listening sessions, on the interviews, on what you have observed, or information that you have collected through other means. So now you need to figure out, what do you do with this? And not just what do you do with this, but what does this mean? As researchers, as designers, we are mostly caretakers of information beyond experts in the information that we have collected. While often we become very knowledgeable about the information that we collect, most often we have to leverage the people that we have interviewed, the people that we have interacted with, the stakeholders, in order to help us make sense of the information that we have collected. And I'm sure that most of you have seen or been in a room where you have done something along the lines of this, asking or writing down information on sticky notes in order to do an affinity mapping exercise, or to simply visualize the information that you have collected. But that information that you have collected doesn't just stay on the screen when you are trying to design a service, because what you need to now start figuring out is, how does it actually relate to other things, and how can you express that this information relates to something else so that someone can achieve a specific thing. If you recall, again, Lou Downey's definition for what a service is, it is something that helps someone do something. So often you will see the usage of use cases defined as a blank, I want to blank so I can blank. So something so that someone can do something. And this is an easy way to kind of like understand what those blanks are, because we have a lot of someones that are part of the system, at least in the case of the Indian Health Service. One example was, as a primary care provider, they want to enter notes asynchronously so that they can work on the electronic health record system without internet. Obviously, this is a more advanced one. You can be as granular as you want, but the end result is going to be something like this. It's going to be a long list of a lot of things with a lot of people, a lot of someones that need to do something, and services that need to be created, modified, fostered, or established in order to achieve the goals of an organization. In the case of the Indian Health Service was, how do they modernize their electronic health record system in order to provide proper healthcare to their population, the American Indian and the Alaskan Native population. And what you often do with this information is that you start to visualize it so that people are able to understand that it is not just the codifying of the research, but it's the presentation of that research in a way that others can understand how things are interconnected. If you speak to them, people will often follow your idea that something is connected to something else. But it is when you are able to visualize things in journeys, which turn into blueprints or journey maps, or if you augment them with enough information into service blueprints, that information actually starts to become alive. And the way that you do that is by first by grouping information in a way that people are able to understand it and how it interrelates with one another. Then it's about finding the commonalities and presenting those commonalities in ways that people can continue to relate. So it's not just about the one person, but about the types of person. It's not just about the one system, but about the types of systems. In this case, the usage of archetypes, which enables us to be able to speak to larger groups of people that are representative of those that are trying to use a specific system. This is in the case of the primary care providers. This is how we were defining the archetype and how we were laying it out in order to present the proper information for the laying out of the services that supported primary care providers. So there were their needs, which are challenges, the opportunities that they had or that the system was going to enable them to have. But most importantly, the fact that different archetypes within this ecosystem have appear at different moments. There may be new primary care providers who need a significant amount of help in order to be able to navigate the ecosystem. There may be people that have spent quite a bit of time within this ecosystem that are able to work through it with ease, but there may be people that have limited access because of who they may be. In this case, contractors. And what we often do with this information is we then further augment it and develop what are called service blueprints. And what service blueprints are the visualization of these journeys that people represented by archetypes and personas go through within specific scenarios that are underpinned by what are those somethings that they are trying to do, meaning what are those services that they're trying to access in order to be able to achieve their goals. So in this case, this is about Dave. Dave is a Native American. He is a veteran. Dave accesses a number of organizations within the IHS, the emergency room, the medical surgical team, the ICU operating room, interacts with the care team, interacts with the support staff. But it is when you lay out what is Dave's experience that you actually are able to start helping others understand that everyone is connected to everyone else and that the work that is being done isn't done in a silo. So in the case of Dave, you see him at the top. He has a number of things that he is trying to do, but if you look at the layers below, you have a number of people that are doing a number of things, even though Dave may not interact with them. Because even though Dave may not speak to someone in billing, a bill will probably be sent to him, or a specific action that happens in the back end needs to take place, such as the Indian Health Service sending a bill to the Department of Veterans Affairs. I could keep going here, but sorry, I won't. But that brings me to just some key takeaways that I kind of touch upon, but wanted to share. And the first one is that service design is about seeing the whole picture. It is about taking into account not just what is on screen presented to someone, but the policies and processes and the decisions that go into putting that thing on the screen or in front of someone, because everything is interconnected. And in order to be able to achieve a service that actually works in one way, shape, or form, you need to have a solid understanding of how it actually connects to the other things. In order to do that, you need to have clear and honest communication, because it is the breakdown of communication that often leads to systems and processes that do not speak to one another, and in which people end up getting hurt. And the way that you do that is through teamwork. It's by working with others in order to be able to achieve your goals. And that brings me to questions. Julia, over to you.
Wow. Thank you, Eduardo. That was a great presentation. Oh, I have so many questions already. Let's see, I'll open it up. If anyone has a question, feel free to chime in or drop it in the chat and I can read it to the group as well.
I have a question, Eduardo. This is Christine Fajardo. I'm new at a job where the team has been utilizing service blueprints, and it feels like the work sort of culminates in the artifact, like the actual blueprint itself. And then that the action that I think is intended to follow as a result of the work of doing the service blueprint doesn't seem to maybe feel as defined, or it doesn't materialize, I think, in the way that maybe the team expected. And I wonder if you have any advice on how to go through this process, which is obviously really involved, creating this artifact of the blueprint itself, but then really connecting it to the actions that a team takes to drive results.
Yeah, so that is unfortunately very, very common. You see often a team will staff a product designer or a service designer rather, and they will create all of these artifacts, and then the artifacts just exist for the sake of those artifacts existing, because the team that may no longer incorporate the service designer at this point will then develop wireframes, will develop interfaces and tools that don't relate back to the blueprint. In the way that I have seen it work best is by ensuring that the information is not just socialized, but that it is championed by those that are making decisions. The service blueprint should basically become, in my opinion, the basis for the development of the product roadmap. It is what should inform what gets created, what gets built, what gets designed, and not just that, but also the reasons why and how it is supported from business needs, from financial requirements or cost, from user needs to the impact that it has, because it is truly the only document that exists that can speak to all of the items that are involved into the creation of one product. Does that kind of like answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And I think what you alluded to earlier about almost like the blueprint existing for the sake of it. I think that's maybe an element here in what I'm observing. So I'm looking for ways to try to get this team excited about the work that they did and turn it into some actionable steps.
Yeah, I mean, here's like what I'm seeing with the benefit of hindsight is that service design is very quickly becoming UX design, where too often you're told, oh, make a wireframe, and you're like, of what? Just make one. We sold one. And you're like, wait, what? Why did you even sell a wireframe? Like, what are you doing? And unfortunately, when you have businesses that don't fully understand what it is that they are speaking to, and that are not fully supported by team members that know what design is, that can speak to things, you end up with teams that are told, make a wireframe. In this case, make a blueprint, make a service blueprint, and having no reason for actually doing it. And Brian can actually speak to that, because in the federal government, we see that all too often when we are told, you will deliver 5 service blueprints or 20 wireframes or 50 personas. And we're like, can you share what this is based on?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different models for how, user research and design then gets incorporated into, say, like an agile development process. And there's no one right answer, but I feel like that's maybe one of the pain points and opportunities for the entire industry to get better, is that handoff. And I see service blueprints as very much sort of living documents. So they're this great perspective to have, but if they're just simply sort of handed off to a team and never sort of addressed again, that's not going to provide the guidance that's really needed. It's much more of like a consistent, iterative revisitation of that document. What do we know about this landscape that has changed as the engineering team has engaged this, and constantly reinforcing, perhaps updating it so that it's sort of living within the Agile team as they develop.
And that's a really good point, Brian. Is like research is continuous. I know that too often we're told like, oh, there's $30,000 for research, and then there's like $500,000 for the development of a thing, and you're like, great, you just like completely hindered the creation of this tool. And the reason that research is continuous is because research evolves, right? And there are a number of things that we do as we go through the process, but most importantly, as researchers, we are not just the only ones that are doing research. We're mostly the shepherds here, right? It's like we start with generative research. Who needs to do generative research? Well, every single person on the team, right? All the way from the engineers who need to figure out, where is this thing that we were told to create going to live, all the way to the product managers that have to figure out, where does this fit within the financial support that I am being told to build this in? And then everyone else in between there. But also as the thing starts getting built, like we go back to the users, to the people that are actually impacted by what we are creating, and we show them the thing, we listen to them, right? We do usability testing in order to understand the things that they are experiencing. And that's research. So, but I feel that oftentimes it's either overlooked, mislabeled, or simply not accounted for.
That's a really good point.
Jennifer made a really good point. I don't know if you want to speak up, Jennifer.
Sure. For us, we used blueprints, journey map, like the same way we use journey maps and personas and archetypes and scenarios. There's something we refer to as we make decisions and as we design and as we work through roadmaps. And for example, if a development team is going to make a particular decision, we go back to these different documents that are intended to guide those decision making, and say, how does this impact here, here, and here? And it's just something that helps people have the same language framework. And sometimes we need to revisit those and rework them. Like you were saying, they are living documents. They're pretty in their static form, but they become more beautiful as they iterate.
Agreed. And I'm actually looking off the screen because I'm trying to find an example of service blueprint that literally just it's an Excel spreadsheet. Some of the most comprehensive service blueprints that I've seen are not like visually appealing like the one that I showed. I obviously showed it just for show, but they're spreadsheets, and they are so thorough that they allow you to like fully understand, oh, if I deploy this thing here, or if I make a change here, it affects all of these other things. Like, okay, hold up, I need to go talk to all of these stakeholders, right? Because this is all like connected to one another. Yeah.
And this seems like an opportunity for exploring the importance of cultural competency in projects and building stronger respect for users. And I really liked how deep your project got into getting to know the users, the healthcare workers, and the end recipients of the care. Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of the challenges that come up with working with government or these more closed systems that maybe the average UX person hasn't had exposure to?
I mean, I think that everyone experiences like their own challenges. Context changes, right? I think that the biggest difference is probably about impact. When you're working in the federal, on behalf of the federal government, partner with the federal government, however you want to say it. And sorry, I keep looking for this blueprint because I am going to find it. You're more than likely going to be affecting tens of thousands of people. And you are often not working for something that will happen in a month or two or a year. You're talking, this is going to impact people for decades to come. Like in the Indian Health Service, the work that we did in 2019 is starting to be used now to do the procurement, meaning to do the acquisition of systems that will be put in place over the next 15 years. If you talk about like the impact that we have, like we're talking that the work that my team did 2 years ago will be impacting American Indians and Alaska Natives, not just for the next 15 years, but probably for the next 30 years as the system is fully deployed and utilized. Like, holy crap. I mean, you have Agile Sex who are doing work with the CDC in support of combating the pandemic. Like, you're not just speaking about like, oh, we're creating a tool that will help you figure out how to right size these Snickers for you, and that you're able to have your name written on it and they'll be shipped to your house. Really cool, but this is a global impact thing. Like that to me is just what the difference is, and which is why I'm like a huge proponent that this was not practice at all. Why I'm a huge proponent of encouraging people to work in the federal and state and local governments, because the impact that you have, you can actually see it. You can actually feel it. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Jennifer for her work with the VA, because as a veteran, it is just, you oftentimes can't put words on it.
Absolutely. And I think both these projects prove the importance of design and making conscious and helpful decisions, not just the fast decisions that I know a lot of companies get forced into. And so I really appreciate all the conscious effort that goes into these. And you're right, this is going to impact people for generations. And that's, design matters. And
there's one,
you're part of that.
Totally. There's one case study that I can never fully tell the story correctly, but it was a designer that said that wrote maybe a Medium post about how design or how an EHR, how an electronic health record system killed his wife, and it was because of the complexity of the interface. And now think about how many people like us work on these systems and have those conversations about you know what, maybe this screen should be easier for the doctor, and who have a fight about someone saying, oh, we'll just train them. It's like, okay, but a doctor is in the room, maybe with a child, came in from an accident. Do we really want to present them a screen that they have to be like, huh, what was that thing? How many, where is it that I need to? Yes, that is it, Julia, thank you. What is it that I need to do on the screen in order to be able to pull up this right thing? Or do we want a screen that is easier? And, you know, like the cognitive load that often makes it is part of this challenging systems that we create is not something that we often take into account, and we don't take it into account because we hinder research, right? One thing, and now I'm obviously like going to completely fanboy on the VA. One thing that the VA does and does really well is like oftentimes research is done with engineers at sites, and they see things and they listen to things together. And when they see them, they see that people are speaking about the system that they created and the challenges. Like that hits a different way, you know? It's not just a designer being like, you didn't implement this in the way that I needed it. It's someone saying, I cannot provide this prescription because the tool doesn't allow me to do that before it times out. Like, that's like, holy crap. That's on me.
So Jennifer says, oh my God, yes, my talk, you're killing your users gets dissed. That design can't kill. It kills every day, especially the most vulnerable non-status quo. Absolutely. Jennifer and Eduardo and Brian, I think you have to team up on a panel somewhere, and I want to be there.
I would love
Love
that.
to. Yeah, I'd love to. You know a lot more about service design than I do, Eduardo, if I get one of our designers, but yeah, I'd love to, you know, if I'm always, you know, open to throwing in my opinion here and there.
And I think service is such an overlooked area. I come from the nonprofit field, and part of the why I switched was just helping people fill out forms that never took into account what technology they'd be using, that they would be sitting in my office, not at home, without access to records. And it's really exciting to see several of our visitors tonight working on these really important projects. And I'm very excited to see positive impacts. Jennifer, using the heart emoji, I like that. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So I'm a content strategist, and everywhere I've worked, I have to sort of evangelize for my discipline, explain what it is, explain how it adds value, and really sell it, and not just do the work, but sell it. And it sounded to me at the beginning, Eduardo, you had a really good definition, a really succinct definition of what you do. And I just wonder about how much you have to explain the value of what you do. Do you have to fight to make people understand how this will benefit them? And could you give us a little insight into that? Thanks.
So yes, and yes. It is a constant activity of not just defining what it is that I do, why it is that I do it, and why it matters, but it's also about helping people understand things in ways that they can get it. What I often do is I try to use analogies because it helps people visualize why the work that I and others like myself do is important and why it should matter to them. One example from Lou Downey's book, Good Services, which I pasted the link in the chat, is about how a good service is easy for people to understand. If you have to wonder what is it that it says, that's a problem. If you need to explain to someone what it is that something says, that's a problem. Like things should be to the extent possible, apparent and intelligible to the right person in the right context, which brings us back to research, right? Is different people have different levels of understanding, but also different people have different needs. The way that you would present a tool or a system for a clinician is different than what you would present for a 9-year-old, for them to be able to interact with a tool. And so when it comes to content strategy, what I often like to refer them to is I like to do two things. In the federal government, I like to first go at it and say, like, we need to make sure that people are able to use the tool with ease. Sometimes I hear, we'll train them. And I say, training costs money. I will hear, oh, there's budget for training. And I will say, but there's not time for training. And one of those things gives, and people are like, fine, I guess you need a content strategist. Yes, I do. And when that fails, what I tell them is, this is a law. You actually have no option. The Plain Language Act is a federal law that requires that any information presented by the federal government in any kind of tool is easy for the public to understand and to interact with. So those are kind of like the two approaches that I take. One is the like trying to help people understand, and the other one is like, actually, whether you want to do this or not, this is a law. So we can either do this now or we'll do it later because someone is going to yell at you. So do we do this the right way? And most often than not, people want to do things the right way. They just need sometimes a little bit of encouragement.
I think one of the powerful points of your presentation, Eduardo, is how these different touch points for the services, when you see them together as a single experience, there's an opportunity to make sure that there's a sort of more of a seamless experience, or the same lexicon for the same terms is being used. That, you know, if there's a website and a kiosk and a call center, that they support each other in one unified experience, and they're not sort of like developed in silos where handoffs aren't great, or they're hearing different, you know, there's different language being used depending on which, you know, which of these touch points someone, you know, a customer or user interacts with. So just seeing that as an entire experience gives you that perspective to really make it a single unified experience. I think that's really powerful.
That is a really, really good point, Brian. Thank you. Cynthia, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. It's
Of
great.
course.
Yes, that was a great question. So Eduardo, you mentioned Lou Down, or is there, and I think you included a few links. Are there other resources that you really value for the like specialized, how to start incorporating this more into our work?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like a Trojan horse for people caring about product management, really, because in reality, like, a product manager cares about all of these things. They just don't have the vernacular that a designer does, nor the same tools that a designer does. But in reality, a product manager cares all the way from the people and how they use the thing to what the thing is, what are the policies, what are the procedures that are in place to how do you deliver that thing. So as a product manager myself, this is like just like trying to get people to start going into that path. But I think that this is mostly like a framing thing, to be honest with you, Julia. There are times that because of where we are within an organization, or because of the organization that we work with, that we are confined to the work that we do. If we are a contractor, consultant working for CBS on their how to find a pharmacy section of their app, that's what that's what we're doing, but you can still find ways to influence the work that you are doing by taking into account kind of like those three areas of like research, planning, and applying, right? You may not be paid to do the research, but you can ask for the research. It more than likely already exists. Whether it is to your liking or not, that's a completely different thing, but there's a chance that something exists. Understanding the processes and the policies and the procedures may not be in your purview, but that may help you be able to better understand how you can design or create or deliver a better outcome. And then how you are able to interact with others within the ecosystem enables you to present better solutions. So it's not really about like being able to do things end to end, because oftentimes we are simply not in that position, but it's about taking some of these items and applying these things into our practice, incorporating them in order to make sure that what we deliver ends up being a better outcome for all involved.
Hey, that's a fantastic goal. That's what we should all be working towards. Jennifer says carving out the time for the due diligence is a big hurdle.
Especially when
Yes.
you're told and deliver this next week.
No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah.
So how do you make the case for the time and the due diligence? You share success stories, you show what the negative impacts might be, lack of effective influence you might have.
So yes, but also you bring people along. There's no better way than and let me see if I can actually find this other thing. There's no better way to help someone understand than when they are part of the team that is basically like experiencing something, because it's difficult to negate what you are seeing with your own two eyes, what you are listening to, what you're part of. I want to show, let me see if I can show a quick video, maybe like a minute or two. This is work that was done by the Department of Veterans Affairs team from the U.S. Digital Service. This was done in 2016, and this is one of my favorite pieces of work that was done in the federal government, because the team documented in collaboration with the folks at the VA. They documented what a veteran was experiencing, and then they used those videos to bring others along. Because sometimes, you know, like you don't want to bring 10 people to an interview with one person, but if you can record their voice at least, all of a sudden that's a game changer. So let me share my screen again, and I'm gonna share a video, and this is. And I will tell you what the impact that this had was in a second when we finish the video.
No, I've been to VA.gov a few times. I know I've been on this website before. I don't remember any of my login information though for my health eVet.
Okay.
So
What
I've
did you use
been
that
on that.
website for?
When I signed in for something on here, it directed me to that, and I just remember it popping up and there being a link for it. I know I've done this with finding the VA form for everything. Sometimes it's really easy, sometimes it's not. I filled out this 1010 E2 so many times. It's like ridiculous.
Is this what you expected to happen when you clicked on that?
That, no. No, I actually expected it to open the website.
And let's go ahead and click advanced. Let's click proceed.
And this is the last time I saw this. This is how it started up, where it allowed me to be able to start now and trying to enroll. And again, like I said, I got about halfway through it, and then all of a sudden, it's like, why do I not understand this? What is the terminology that you're trying to use for this? Because this doesn't make any sense. And that's when I ended up calling the 800 number to get someone to walk with me through it, because I was like, look, I'm having an issue. I don't understand what you guys are asking for. And I've seen this come up too a few times, where it's like you need an updated PDF. And I'm like, all right. Okay.
What are your impressions of this page? What do you think should be used?
This is annoying that you can't use.
So, Cynthia, a little bit more of an answer to your point is that oftentimes bad content strategy or lack of clear language costs money, because it is a heck of a lot more expensive to have to staff a call center because your tool sucks than it is to have a tool that allows people to be able to accomplish their job, what they're trying to do, their tasks in an easy way. But most importantly, what I loved about this was the rawness of it. You are listening to a veteran share their experience as they were trying to use a critical tool to get access to healthcare. You transpose this to any other vertical, and the same thing can happen. Obviously, as researchers, we become storytellers. So figuring out how to tell the right story in order to make sure that people are able to understand why things matter is important, but it takes work. If I remember correctly, Marianne Brody, who was the researcher that you heard in the video, and Emily Tavares, they did. I want to see if it is here. I'm not sure that it is here, but they, I think that it was over 200 interviews that they performed to basically land on this, which enabled them to tell the story of we are actually hurting veterans, right? Because it's not a leap here. There are veterans who require access to healthcare. There are a number of ways in which to get access to healthcare. One is by picking up a phone and calling. In order to do that, you need to find the number. In 2000, what year are we in? In 2000, you maybe found a yellow pages easily. In 2021, you'd be hard pressed to find a yellow pages book. So how are you going to find that number? Oh, well, you need to call 411. Well, what if a veteran is destitute or homeless? How do they call 411? How do they get access to that? And you start asking all of these questions, and all of a sudden saying like, well, your shitty interface actually leads to veterans being on the street and not having access to healthcare. And you have the data to back it up. And
Yeah.
You know,
Because it reveals all the gaps in the process. It's not just the form designed by the people through bringing them in to show stakeholders as boom. Yes. Yep.
And you know, like this team was absolutely amazing. They showed this to the secretary at the time at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and this led to a huge undertaking to modernize almost all of the Department of Veterans Affairs systems that continues on today. But that was work that was led by researchers, bringing others along to help them understand this is what happens when systems, tools, processes fail.
Mhm. Absolutely. And Jennifer says if they're deaf, they may not be able to use a phone, for example.
Exactly. And they would have to find like what is it? Oh, I can't remember what is the name of the technology.
Email. Even having an email opportunity, which is something that processes don't even have an opportunity to send an email in customer service. When I started working on the VA.gov modernization, the contact us and the crisis link were buried in an accordion that wouldn't open on mobile. It worked on desktop, but it didn't work on mobile. And it's always these sorts of things of thinking about the experience through the lens of the most vulnerable first, instead of people like those of us that are working in the delivery, is critical. And it's one of the things that I've been very impressed from talking with Ashley and Joe that Coforma does really well.
And when do we start considering those dark patterns? Because how deep the actual contact information is hidden, but what it takes a person in need to find an actual other person to talk to, if it's buried deep enough, that's a dark pattern to influence their behavior and keep them from direct contact, I feel.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No. It was just, followed by a deep sigh.
In my
emoticon for a deep sigh.
In my experience, it's mostly just the unknown unknowns, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, which always makes me laugh. But people just don't know what they don't know, and they don't think about, like I worked with someone on a VA thing, and they wanted to make the button say, "I'm walking into the VA now." And it was just a head desk, like, we can't, that's so not inclusive. But it was just, they had a vision of what a vet was, and it was their retired officer father who's perfectly able-bodied, instead of considering the most vulnerable person first. And if you think of the most vulnerable person you can think of at first in everything that you do, you're going to make it better for everyone else.
Absolutely. And in the chat, Jennifer mentioned MITRE in Bedford is another company that's doing really impactful work. So if anyone else is excited about work with further impact, Jennifer has shared just some information on them as well. So, yeah. Well, does anyone have any other questions or thoughts or ideas on how we fix everything? Oh, thank you, Bob, for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for a great talk, Eduardo. Thanks, everybody at UXPA. All right. Have a good night.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let's see.
All right, who has pressing questions? Happy to answer them.
I think we lost Christine. I have so many questions and they're all like, how do we fix things? Still trying to think. Are there any projects you can talk about that you're excited about that you have coming up that you want us to be keeping an eye out for your further impact? I know it's hard when you can't necessarily talk about things publicly.
Uh,
Or a dream project, something that you would really like to work on with this approach? Sorry, this is my cat joining the meeting. Okay, thank you.
let's see. I mean, there are a number of projects that we're working on that I'm like really excited about. I think that that one that I am probably the proudest of was last year. Well, 2019. In 2019, we created a program called Health Plus. The program is an approach to implement research, design, and engineering in the healthcare space to bring solutions that are people-centered faster to market. Those solutions are meant to be focused on diseases that are not often considered to be worth funding, or at least worth funding well, such as sickle cell disease that affects tens of thousands of African Americans in the United States, or Lyme disease, which often is also considered to be a fake disease. And I'm super excited because we are able to bring organizations that are not known for moving fast or for solving problems with speed to as partners in this journey to bring patients, providers, policymakers into the room and to try to come up with solutions. So if you think about service design and the different components, and I'll get a little bit more into service design. So service design is often defined as having two areas. There's front stage, which is what you see and what you interact with. And then there's backstage, which is what happens behind the scenes. So on the front stage, you may have an app, you may have forms, you may have tools. On the back end or the backstage, you're probably going to have policies, you're going to have technology, infrastructure, so on and so forth. And almost all of those things are represented by one or more people. In the Health Plus program, we bring everyone. So not only do we bring the people that create the tools that others use and the clinicians that use those tools, but we also bring the people that need that something done for them. But we also bring everyone in between, both on the backstage and the front stage. So we bring policymakers, we bring rule makers from within the federal government, we bring insurers and those that apply those things. And it's super cool when you have them in the same room speaking to the same issue using a shared language. Because as researchers, designers, we're facilitators. So we're able to help them understand that when we say X, this is what we mean. This is what we're trying to achieve. And walking them through that is just like absolutely amazing. When you see someone talking about how sickle cell disease was something that basically sidelined them for most of their life until a doctor somewhere decided to prescribe them hydroxyurea, and that was a game changer for them, and how now they are going to school for medicine, but that the texts that they are reading don't include. All of a sudden you start seeing like all of the different spaces in which these things have failed, or where there are openings for improvement, if you want to use more positive language. And it is amazing how caring can lead to us actually making things better. And it is super cool how this program that we created in one way, shape, or form has provided the know-how to many people to actually step up and make a difference.
That's fantastic. So Tharnaya has a question, then Jennifer, I'm going to end on your question. Sarnyaya says, I'm switching my career into service design from a business role. I'm having a hard time between all the different roles in design. How does service design differentiate from UX? Is that line now blurring into a designer role? And I think you alluded a little bit to this earlier on.
So I think that coming from a business role, you probably have a better grasp of service design than designers than a UX designer or an interaction designer trying to move into a service designer role does. The reason for that is that service design is about all of the different components that are part of that something that someone needs. Often, we as designers don't fully understand the intricacies of policies or of business decisions or of cost breakdown. And someone that comes from a business aspect can grasp that. And because service design doesn't really call for the delivery of beautiful artifacts, you're in a much better position than a visual designer who is able to create the most appealing interfaces to all of a sudden be able to grasp everything else. But your point is very much valid and very real. There are a lot of different items and there's a lot of nuance between the different roles. And the reality is that while often there is one person that is a service designer, service design is a team sport. And that's why like my final like takeaway was that like it requires a team to be able to do this. Success actually comes when you're able to have a number of people that are able to back each other up. Because if you develop coming from the business role, you document and you capture all of this information and you develop this massive spreadsheet that is representing a service blueprint, and you present it to your leadership, they're gonna be like, what is this? But if you partner with a designer that is able to visually represent it, and if you partner with a content strategist or a writer that is able to help pick specifics from what you have documented, and you partner with someone in analytics to show how specific moments in the journey affect people or services or how much it costs, all of a sudden you have the whole team telling a story. And there's nothing that is more powerful than a well-told story. Does that kind of like answer your question, Saranya?
Yeah, thank you so much. So essentially what we're saying is that from a service designer perspective, it's kind of at a higher level and you would work like a higher umbrella and you would be working with different designers like UX, UI.
Yeah, and not just different designers, but different capacities. You're in different roles. You're going to be working with engineers to actually understand what are the systems that are in place. You're going to be working with data scientists to understand how often does a thing happen in order for it to be valid or to understand what is the impact. You may have to work with analytics in order to figure out if a thing that you're presenting or trying to understand actually even happens. You may have to work with the business to figure out if a thing that you're trying to propose even is a thing that they care about, right? Because that's another thing. If you come to them with something that is not aligned with the business, then it really isn't that helpful, because at the end of the day, you're trying to focus on the mission of the organization that you are supporting.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course.
Good. It sounds like you're in a great position to make that switch. I hope it works out. And Jennifer, I think this is a question that we all should keep in mind. How do you replenish to stay in top shape to do this work for the long haul? Yeah.
I personally replenish by seeing the amazing work that my team is doing, by listening to the stories of others in our space of what they are doing, and by sharing with others and hopefully inspiring others to join this growing workforce of people in the federal, local, and state workforce, trying to improve services for one another, trying to improve processes for one another. Like, and I haven't done any reading on this, but I know that Anita Chang out of San Francisco has been working with the San Francisco, either with the California Digital Services or the San Francisco Digital Services. I can't ever keep them straight. But on COVID-19 guidance, and helping to make the guidance that is coming out of from policymakers into things that are digestible and applicable by everyday people. I talk about impact. Like, that is awesome. That what is a 30-page document, Anita and her team are able to distill into, look at these 3 sentences. That is awesome.
So you have to come back to the positive impact and see that the blood, sweat, and tears and years that you put into this work, it's valuable and it's valued. I think, yeah.
For every bad day that I have, I know that someone is doing something awesome, and just reading about it is like, cool. I have something to look forward to.
Keep like a little box, the box of the wins.
Yep.
Is the patients you've impacted and the things that have worked out well. Gonna keep you going. Jennifer says, U.S. Digital Response is always seeking volunteers. I work with them and they're a great group, low ego, high impact. And VA change takes so long. Yes. Yeah. And you gotta be careful when you're making changes in systems that impact that many people.
Agreed.
So, well, thank you so much, all of you. Thank you, Eduardo. This was fantastic and it's cliche, but inspiring to see the impact that design and thoughtfulness can have. And I hope we can all bring this into more of our work.
Well, thank you all for having me. Thank you, Cal, for inviting me. Always a pleasure and deeply honored to be able to share some of the work that we are doing, and just hope that leads to more of y'all working to improve services for all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so inspiring. Thank you.
All right, and so we have links to a lot of Eduardo's work that will be shared in the Slack, and I think we'll drop it in the YouTube description as well, hopefully. And keep spreading the word on service design and being a thoughtful worker in this space. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. See you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.